Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, Olúwa mi ò dìde ojú ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Welcome, everyone, to Theoryforge Chronicles, Episode 4. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about economy. And, of course, I am joined by familiar faces, Sog and legendary Neurotoxin. And in for Diggs is Veluux, who is a Theoryforge original who's not been with us for a while now. How you been?
I have been good, been busy. I've missed out on so much. Apparently, you guys have so much going on now. I can barely keep up with the content. So it's good. It's exciting. I like seeing you guys put on the show every week, and I'm excited to be back and talk a little bit with you guys. So it'll be a fun time. Awesome. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are very happy to have you. And we also have a special guest, Jon Warren, is joining us as well. So I wanted to just also give you a chance to kind of, for people who might not know you, tell us a little bit about your role in Elyria.
Yeah, I'm Duke Jon Warren. I run the Duchy of Vitalis in the Kingdom of Elyria on the NA East server. And basically the Free Kingdom contest that Soulbound Studios held, I won one of the 7 Duke packages. Well, one was a King package, the other 6, yeah. But I won one of those packages, and I've been building my community ever since. We're the economic duchy. But now we've got some competition, so it should be fun. Yeah.
And that is why we are talking economy. So I don't know who has any specific ideas or where to start. It's open to anyone. I know there's been some chatter on Discord. So.
Well, John, I'm going to start by asking you, what is your plan for, I guess, success and stability? What do you plan to focus your economy on? If you're willing to tell, if the secret sauce is something that you're not, ready to share or anything just yet.
No. I'm definitely open to sharing. I love sharing ideas, and the more you talk with people about stuff, the better the ideas become, right? If I'm developing something by myself, and then I bring someone in on it, they're always like, what about this? And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, why don't we do that? So yeah, as far as building our economy, we're focusing on sustainability, creating, it's essentially like our whole focus is value exchange. Every time someone provides value in some way to the duchy, to other people in the duchy, we want to provide ways to facilitate those exchanges of value so that people are getting value in return every time they provide it. And so we've set up we're going to set up, we don't have the game, we're going to set up incentive programs for pretty much everything. Everything we do, even like social programs, are going to be designed to be sustainable, so they make a profit and then we can run them again. And so like tournaments and stuff, the stuff that we'll have people doing in the tournaments, say we have hunters go out and bring back Canis rabbit skins, and then those skins are handed to the tanners, and we hold a tanning competition. And then once those are tanned, then we send them to the tailors, or they start making armor out of them. And by the end of the tournament, we have finished products as well as like the entry fees to help us cover costs, and people are having fun doing what they love. So those types of things, we're implementing a bounty system. So if someone sees that a bridge is broken, right, then they can go to their local mayor, magistrate, say, hey, I'm a mason. I'll fix that bridge if the duchy will reward me. And that saves the duchy time and effort. So we can afford to pay him rather than sending out our own crew to go fix it. And so he gets value for fixing our bridge. And since we didn't have to deploy any resources or move any funds, that saves us quite a bit of value. So those types of things, and then sponsoring innovation everywhere.
Very cool.
Like promoting every type of creative thought process. Got some fun ideas there.
Nice. That sounds really neat. So it sounds like trying to get do events that really get everybody involved. And I can see how a lot of that sort of stuff, like during one of the events where Feasty is involved in a giant sandwich making contest, soup and sandwich making contest or whatever, that sort of thing. And then all the hunter gatherers and all the bakers and butchers and everybody else has all their roles and stuff, helping prepare the materials. All the chefs get to do the thing. You might even get like the blacksmiths together to repair all of the equipment from the last time you did it and do some upgrades where available. So yeah, I definitely see that, like setting things up in such a way that you try to get as many people involved. And that sounds like not just a good thing for the economy, but also a really good thing for player engagement. Trying to get everybody involved means, everybody's going to want to play and be involved and continue their interaction, which, it's kind of important if you want to maintain a community. So that's pretty smart.
Yeah, I like that you're planning that, because this game is seems like one of the big things that they're kind of really betting on is getting players involved regularly and getting a community developed, because unlike some of the other games out there that just kind of you can solo stuff all the time, or you can just go do your own thing, it's not as interwoven. So this game really is kind of banking on that, and I think that's important. That's a good, smart move to get even your own, outside of the game mechanics, get your own player social incentives within your kingdom, because that's what's going to make this game boom or bust. I think it's really interesting.
So, yeah, you've got these plans on wanting to make sure that production keeps running, that there's always stuff available for second level producers and craftsmen. How much have you thought about the tribal makeup of your duchy? Where would you like this duchy to be, and what if you could pick the top 3 tribes that you would like to inhabit your duchy, what would they be?
Yeah, so I've thought about this quite a lot, and I've got plans for most tribes. They're the Weird is pretty much the only one that I'd shy away from. But man, I love the Touresque because of their I believe they've got a political and economic focus, and then. I think the Kipik are technological and economic. Both of those societies would be good, and the Dross would be nice, but due to the fact that that's mostly swampland that they inhabit, I don't know. That could be hard to work with. I'm actually more concerned about biome than anything else. The tribes, we'll figure a way to work with every tribe. I don't think it's going to be too prohibitive either way.
The tribe and biome are tied, so you're
to a certain extent, yeah.
If you're claiming an area with certain biomes, you would assume that it would be populated with, and of course you could be wrong, but. You're not going to buy a mountain plateau full of Touresque.
Yeah. Now there also will be transitional areas in each biome. So it's not going to be like one kingdom only has a single biome in it, right? There's going to be areas of different biomes, and duchies are big places. During Exposition and Kingdoms of Elyria, we can kind of seed population in there if we want to, raise a certain population for some reason, something like that. But they keep maintaining that tribe isn't as big a deal, because basically tribes, I think the way Caspian said it is that tribes are the way things were, and kingdoms are the way things are. So the tribes are more like the cultural history, and then the kingdoms are how things will become, right? Because we might start out Toresk, right? But if everybody wants to play, Broodveer, well, then all of a sudden the Broodveer population in our kingdom keeps growing, and the players are going to be a whole lot more, they're going to propagate a whole lot faster than the NPCs, I think. So I think pretty soon the players will change the landscape of the tribes entirely.
Yeah. I think exposition is going to be interesting for that, for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to ask, what are your thoughts on that in terms of what do you think is going to happen during exposition in terms of tribe and biome interactions, and how much do you think that's actually going to change over the course of it?
I think it'll change a ton. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to import this tribe in here. We'll get a group and we're just going to be ferrying characters right and left. So I know people plan on doing that, but also the way we develop our infrastructure will change it. If you build a ton of roads between the Toresk and the Dross, right? Well, then they're going to intermingle a whole lot more than some other, tribe that might border them on a different area but have no usable roads, right? So the way we develop our infrastructure will definitely affect that to a large extent. And we've got some fun plans for maximizing the effects of our infrastructure, making sure our road system is as efficient as possible, and all that.
Very cool.
So we talked quite a bit leading up to this in our Discord channel, where you joined us, about limited resources and how that affects economy. So my biggest question about limited resources my two biggest questions about limited resources are, one, how limited is limited? Because we live on a planet with limited resources, but we don't act like it's a planet with limited resources. And we're not quite, some would argue that we're way past the tipping point. But, I live every day consuming whatever I want, right? So, how harsh is it going to be in Elyria? Even will there be plentiful resources so that, the 10-year storyline, it's only where people are being really stupid does it become an issue? Or is this before the game even launches, we've outfished the ocean or something? So that's my one thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around, where the balance is. And the other one is that if we're talking about this kind of harvest something, you're taking it away, and if you over harvest, so the way that gamers play, going back to that Lord British video where he's talking about how players destroyed Ultima Online's the virtual ecology in a day. So how much is killing one thing, how meaningful is killing one thing? So in Ultima Online, you walk around and you're like, kill a deer, kill a deer, kill a deer. You might as well be playing whack-a-mole, right? But there's recently a hunting game that came out where tracking and planning actually killing a bug is a real deal. And then how much resource do you get out of it? So in World of Warcraft, you kill a wolf and you get one wolf pelt, which is 1/20th of what you need to make a pair of pants or something. But in real life, maybe you kill one wolf or one deer or whatever, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it, like in the process, and the economy further down gets fed with a whole lot of different stuff. So you've got meat and bones, and saving the blood in some cases for food, and
also
all of that. So my what I want to talk about just for 10, 15 minutes or so is, what do we think the balance is going to be like there, and how do we make it just not stupid?
I think it's really interesting that, over the course of MMOs, how things have gone from, we kill one of these things, or I guess gaming in general, like you kill one thing and you can do a lot with it, to like now you get to where, like Sog, you were saying, you kill one wolf, but you've only, you're 1/20th of the way to where you need to be for this one item you're making. So it's this huge quota. There's this huge grind aspect, which Chronicles of Elyria is actively trying to mitigate that grind factor. So I think it would be an interesting, paradigm to kind of flip that to where, with this huge limit on resources, stuff being finite, just having one thing, and you kill one animal and you have like 20 or 30 resources out of it, and now you have different ways that you can, different areas you can go, but people can't just, go killing them all because you run out of stuff to do. And one thing that I was actually thinking while you were talking, Zog, is it'll be really interesting to see what the design team does mechanically, whether they give themselves basically a market balancing ability to, inject resources when they need to stabilize the market or things, or if they want to just go, hey, these are the rules, these are how it goes, and just see what the players do with it. Because I feel like you got to kind of like pick your poison there, because if you market, you balance the market and inject things, people who have set up a business doing something and injecting stuff into the market will get really upset at the team. And then the other way around, if you let the players do whatever, what are they going to do to the world? Which I think is entertaining. I think that could be a fun game all in itself, but they got to make money too with the game.
I wonder if I could just outmine this mountain. This is like my goal is not to cooperate. My goal is not to help my duchy. My goal is to throw away sparks, just beating into this mountain and mining and throwing everything away. And, if I die, I'll buy another spark, whatever. I'm not eating. I'm not playing the game. I am going to destroy this mountain.
Start with the tunnel and go from there. There's one thing, though, that also was kind of missing from the ecology in Ultima Online, and I really hope they do it different here. It's the actual danger and lethality of creatures. Realistically, you're out in the wild, you've got a knife or a sword or an axe or whatever, you try to take down a deer, it's going to gore you, it's going to kick you, it's going to run away. You try to take down a bear, you're dead. You try to take down a wolf, you're dead. A badger will kill you. It'll get like one of the arteries in your leg. You're dead. Like, animals are really, really lethal and freaking scary when they're angry. So the idea of you just being able to go out in leather armor with an axe and just start hacking away at the ecology, you should be dead in a second.
That sounds like what you're describing is a lot like the way it works in Armageddon Mud, which now I've said in our conversations numerous times that whether this was a direct influence on Caspian's design plan or not, a whole lot of what we hear about Chronicles of Elyria is like straight taken from this mud from 1993, that including the way that you carry progress from one permadeath character to the next, like that a whole lot of it conceptually comes from games like that, where you start in this game, you basically are nothing, and you have to wander into a tavern and find an established character who is willing to take you on for a profession. But the first time I wanted to play, I wandered out of the woods and I tried to kill things. And like exactly what you said happened. Like, you don't win the fight with the deer. Like it just.
What's funny is as you were talking about this, I'm pretty sure I was on Xenoblade Chronicles just killing bunnies for no reason. So I do have a question for y'all to educate me. In the real world, things do replenish. Now, things replenish at sometimes geologically slow rates. So within this world, will there be animals that can, have their own offspring and over time replenish?
Yes. Yeah. So wild animals replenish the same as the ones that you're raising as livestock and stuff like that. And that's so much cool stuff. So let me see if I can hit all of these. So the first one, the amount of resources, like how limited are things, right? We're entering a humongous world. They don't plan to give us the means to leave the starting continent until 3 years into the game. So they expect there to be a ton of content available on the starting continent. We're talking about a world that's like, I think it's like 2,200 Skyrims, and that may be an old figure, but it's around that. That's ridiculously large, right? And there's so many just, little niche things about it, like, oh, there's an iron vein here, and maybe no one sees it for the first 3 years of the game, and it just sits there untouched because we've got to explore our own territory. When we start out, we basically get a vague map of, oh, there's a forest here. You have to go see where the trees are because that map might be completely incorrect. And so like map making, accurate maps are going to be important. And like that's another cool thing, getting people engaged in cartography and stuff like that. There's all sorts of stuff we can do there. Like what I plan to do is incentivize it, hold contests. You send people out to explore territory you need explored and have a reward for the person who has the best map. You test it out by giving each map to a party of adventurers who then enter a contest to see who can, gather the most resources, something along the path to prove that they reached each point, something like that. So yeah, it's going to be humongous. And the technology we're starting with, we aren't going to be able to like strip mine these areas at the drop of a hat. We're talking about really primitive technology. And so in a 520 year period in game, I don't know that we'll be able to mine out everything or deplete all of those, major resources like, wood, maybe that's more possible, like the iron veins, the precious metals, all that stuff is probably going to be harder to find than, say forest, right? So depleting those should definitely take some time. And then there's the factor of, do I want to travel to go get iron from a mine, X distance away? Or do I just want to melt down some of the excess swords we crafted? Because realistically, we're not going to use those and they'd be better used as plows. And so balancing all of that is going to be important. Then there's the, and then there's the balance between renewable and unrenewable resources. We can grow back trees. We can't grow back iron.
No, but everything is like aluminum recyclability levels. Like apparently that's kind of the model, and that's partially because they don't want people who fail at crafting to basically be like, well, crap, I have to go out and hit the mines again and, be coughing stuff out of my lungs for the next 3 weeks while I, go try to smelt all this stuff into enough workable material. No, it's going to be, take your crap scrap that didn't work, throw it back in the thing, turn it back into ingots, and try again. And I actually really appreciate that as a way to reduce the amount of waste and allow crafters to stay self-sufficient until they've actually produced a product.
There goes my plan to turn all of the copper in the world into sand. I've lost. So it seems like if I were to put a spin on John's plan, like say I'm writing an article about Jon Warren here, is say lack of quest hubs annoys John, so he turns his capital city into the quest hub of Elyria. So it's like,
well, about that.
And I these like a little bit there, but it's like this idea of having the bounties and creating incentives, and you have a go-to place. Well, what should I do? Well, we've already got that set up because John is scripting OPCs and he's paying people to set up quests for you to go do stuff, and that it's really embracing the contract system to the point where all of a sudden, for a new person coming into the game, it doesn't really feel that different to go. I mean, apart from the environment and the skill system and everything, to playing another game, because you're walking in and plenty of resources to figure out what you should be doing. And if you go try to do whatever you want to do, there's probably no reward for it. It's like turning, because you can just turn off the goat hunting quest, and now if people go kill a bunch of goats, then they'll probably end up starving unless they can skin, unless they can butcher and cook the goat themselves.
Yeah,
I think
go
yeah, I was going to say, I think the finite resource thing is really interesting, just from the aspect that players can, knowing that things will be limited, even if there are renewable resources, is that, hey, here's the forest over here. You get a bunch of people together and you kind of start gating the access to that resource, with things, and people can start developing their own, kind of holding territory and things like that to set up things. But when Neuro, when you were talking about the crafting, it kind of triggered this a little bit of excitement, thinking that the way this game is being designed seems like is, in your typical MMO, you've got, I want to be a paladin in World of Warcraft, and I've also got to have these other skills to support what I want to do, and then I've got to grind all this material to build up these skills. Like, it actually just lets people, like, if you like to go hammer and chisel away at a mountain for like your whole 20 sparks of life, like Sog, you can do that, and then just people will buy it if he doesn't throw it away, and they can focus on just crafting and then reusing that and just really heightening up and spinning up their ability in that one thing. So it's like you can play what you want to play, but it will be interesting to see the balance from the survival side of how much can you do and still stay alive and achieve the goals you want to achieve in your field. Because with every game, it seems like there's all this extra stuff tacked on that you don't really want to do. It's like a chore to get to where you want to go. So it'll be interesting to see how much the community can help blend that into where people can really do what they want to do and have less chores, less grindy aspects, to see if it really materializes that way.
And in that regard, this kind of ties into what you're talking about with the questing. So the bounty system definitely helps gameplay and player interaction and all that, but we actually plan on having a questing system of sorts. We've got plans to enhance the in-game apprenticeship system. So new players coming in, we're like, hey, if we set someone up at like the local tavern or somewhere around town where people would usually pass through, and then they can get in touch with new people and say, hey, you're getting set up, introduce them to what's going on. We have a job board of sorts with, this caravan's coming through on this day, and we need these logs brought in and all this. And so then we're like, hey, what are you interested in? We can try you out on a bunch of different stuff. And throughout the course of you helping these people out, we'll provide you with starter gear. And so then they are working for their starter gear. We can afford to pay for it because they're providing value to the existing businesses around the town. And they get to try out different gameplay styles, meet the people in the town, and get to know people they're going to be working with in a bit. And so all of that's going to be super fun. I think there's a group that's setting up taverns in our kingdom as a sort of like quest hubs. So they'll have people there to help coordinate all that. And we plan on having some of that on our own. So it's going to be fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, I love that idea because I really do feel like, and I was mentioning this in chat, and I've said this ever since we've had this show, because EverQuest Next was somewhat sandboxy, supposedly, is that I don't feel like most people are going to actually like a true sandbox. Most people will need some sort of direction. And a lot of it, I guess, is personally, because it falls back to, my first MMORPG. I remember the first time I logged into EverQuest at home, which really, vanilla EverQuest, there wasn't any real direction. I mean, there really, despite the name, we're not quests. You just sort of logged in. I had no clue what to do. Luckily, I had an uncle who is the one that got me to play with him. He came by, showed me what to do, kind of where to go, and it kind of took off from there. But so having the equivalent of my uncle, as people walk in, I mean, I think that's going to be needed to keep people attracted. So I like that idea.
And new players, like, why do you need to go, kill 30 chickens and, catch us, 5 squirrels and cut down a few trees. And the player's like, I just want to be a blacksmith.
The best is to kill 30 chickens and get pristine eggs. It's like, that's not how you get eggs from chickens.
Yeah, exactly. So like letting people do the things that they want to do right off the bat, having ways to introduce them into that, they're not going to have gear starting out and all this. And so that having ways to just put them right into things and help out existing businesses in the area and get them set up as businesses. We've got fun plans for that as well. We just finished our Scales of Italis business contest. We're holding the final interviews for the last 3 the finalists in the contest, and people pitched us business plans. I mean, some of them were like 10 to 14 pages long, really detailed stuff. I mean, I was surprised at how much content people were able to craft, like legitimate content, based on the very little that we already know. And, it's fantastic stuff. We got some really cool projects started and people got together and just brainstormed, and it's fantastic. But we plan on using that as a vehicle to help new players set up their own businesses. They come in, they're like, well, I want to start a logging empire, but it's just me and an axe right now. And we're like, well, hey, enter our contest. If you pitch us the right plan, we'll get you set up with some investment and work out some sort of deal. Maybe we offer you land for your business and you pay it off over the course of your business, this, that, and the other, some sort of profit sharing deal. And so they get started with what they want to do, and we get value added to the duchy, and, both sides profit.
And this is how it works in games like Armageddon Mud and Shadows of Isildur, very games that have been around for quite a while, but they support like 40 players as like an actual number of players, like 40. And like, so in Shadows of Isildur, you can only play, if you want to play with other people, you only play as a human in Minas Tirith. And you're not even allowed to play as a different race unless you earn a bunch of RP points, kind of like story points, and apply them to your next character creation and get that character name approved and all of that. But if you decide to be an orc, like you have the points, then you're the only non-NPC orc, right? So you rely on, and it relies on volunteers and paid employees to do the part where, like, if you walk into a shop and you want to interact with a shopkeeper, someone needs to take over the shopkeeper. Right? But where I'm going with this is that how I've seen this work with very small groups of people. But when we take this and say that, I mean, a duchy is huge, but there are a lot of dukes on the server too, right? So it's not just like 40 people and maybe 8 people online at a time in Minas Tirith. It's thousands of people spread across the server trying to do all this, and the people who are doing the work to make it happen paid to do it. It's this mind-boggling. Instead of being paid to do it, because that's the old model.
Yeah.
The old model is that people got paid to do it. No, they didn't buy in. So this was a paid job because they had to make sure that there were people online operating the servers to do it. So
yeah.
how do we take this? I love the idea of building the contracts, and from that level, helping to encourage people and helping things like the logging empire. Like that's exactly how you described it. Exactly how that would happen in Shadows of Isildur or Armageddon, where you would show up and you'd be like, the one thing I have is an axe, and you would get to know someone, and they would help you get started, and they would invest in you, and they would expect that you did work for you, and it's fun for like 40 people. How does this concept scale up where we have 1,000 new people showing up into the game in a day or something like that? How do we handle the early stages? Because I've only seen it in what I call a like mature server or mature game, not like age-wise, not mature players, but the game is past its original influx. You know, there's a steady in and out. Every day, one player never shows up again, or one player comes back, or something like, and it's sustainable. It's come to this balancing point. How do we handle the beginning? And exposition is pre-launch and all of that, so there's time for it all to fall apart. But a lot of people wait for launch too. Like what do you think it's going to be like at the beginning when you're just trying to get all these contracts done? How do you imagine your life will be trying to make this a reality?
It's going to be nuts. Like we're talking about the population of towns doubling or tripling in a couple days. And so all of a sudden you've got like, 3 times the able bodies that you had yesterday. And so, on the one hand, like that means everybody's jobs get done. On the other hand, like, can you create enough jobs to keep up with the new people coming in? So that's going to be hard to balance right off the bat. But if we do it right, we should be able to work some stuff out, right? So say I'm a blacksmith, and I'm working away at my swords, and I'm like, well, I need one guy to help me out with these tasks. That would be enough to get it done. Well, all of a sudden they're like, hey, we have 5 people who want to be blacksmiths. Can they come help you out? Well, then it's like, well, okay, you two, if you can go gather this resource, you two take this stuff and move it over here. And all of a sudden you can speed that process up a ton, stock up on resources, and get a whole lot more done. And then if it's too much flow for one town to handle, well, then we coordinate, right? The upper level view, the mayors are going to be focusing on that, the direct player interaction. The mayors are where it's at, because the players are the economy. Right? Like I can talk about this, I want to build the economy this way and that way, but the players are the ones that create it. I just facilitate that, and I try to facilitate it as much as possible. And so the mayors directly interact with the players. They're the ones who are, on the front lines, like, okay, you here, we'll get you set up with this guy and this guy. And then they're like, we have too many people to handle here. And so then they say that to the count. The count's like, all right, these 2 are full. This one isn't, or maybe all of my cities are full. we need to send this overflow somewhere. So he talks to the fellow, his bordering counts, and we get deals worked out. And, we have a caravan coming through, so we'll pick them up on the way, and they can act as escorts for the caravan, get some experience traveling and all that. And, it's going to be a mess. There's no doubt about it, because population will be insane, going from exposition to launch.
I like that you said, you want to facilitate, the players, because I think it's just really, really interesting because, as a kingdom owner or duchy, as this big level organizer, you're a public servant in essence, like in meta economy and, in real life, a real city organization, they're public servants. They're facilitating everybody interacting in the way that they do. I think it's really interesting because the last few games that we've been following with Theoryforge in the past, EverQuest Next, Revival, it's just really interesting to have participated in those communities and seen how much willing content creation there was out of the community. And I mean, I think you can see that with the culture in general with, we've got YouTube, we've got all these things, like people want to make stuff. They want to put their time into stuff. And it's just like baffled me why I see the MMO industry going like the opposite direction. Like you're having to have millions and millions of dollars to make a game because they're trying to make all the content instead of just making a game where they're just giving the players the tools to create the content and be the content for each other. So I think that's like the real, like the line we're on, like that's what we're waiting for a game developer to cross is like, okay, instead of us creating the game and content, we're creating the mechanics, we're facilitating the gameplay and the theme. You guys make the game. You be the game. And I think that's this tipping point that we're at. And Chronicles of Elyria so far sounds like it's the closest that is getting to that. And I feel like every concept, like we had EQ Next and then we had Revival, like I feel like it's getting there. It's like you feel this kind of water building up behind the dam. At some point it's got to burst. One of these games has to crash through and actually be successful, because I feel like that it's out there. You can see it with all the people participating, sending you 14-page, applications for positions within your kingdom. Like it's there. It's just developers just have to finally give in and, front the money to support the, frameworks that players make their own game.
Yeah, like it's fantastic. And that's one of the reasons, like same mindset. I was like, one of these has to make it. And with the team that SBS has, I think they've got a crazy good shot to do it. And that's why I've, gone all in on this. I think this economy has me more excited than any in development game I've seen in, forever. It's fantastic. Like I love it so much, and I've got so many plans for it. I've got a whole banking structure and like financial services industry plotted out, and I mean, like in a society where physical transfers of items have to happen, then creating a ledger-based banking system, that's revolutionary. That'll change everything, right? And so, refining that, and then, currency mechanics are going to be nuts, right? Because player-created currency and all that. That's going to be its own mess. It'll take a while for that to get sorted out. But eventually people, gravitate towards the currencies that work the best. And banking will have to be done the right way. But if we do it the right way, then it's just another means to facilitate all that activity. People are like, hey, I don't have to take my wagon full of gold to the market to go purchase the items I need. I'll just bring it to the bank, store it there, and then I don't have to physically bring the money with me everywhere, because they'll recognize the banker's check, right? And so we have the letters of credit. That'll be fantastic. And oh man, it's so exciting. I haven't seen anything like it.
It'll be interesting to see, how much the developers get pushed towards, what they incorporate from the current MMO genre to, you want to attract players to the game, to get them involved in all this. It'll be interesting to see that balance, like how much of their core vision do they stick to, and how much do they kind of like, earlier you were talking about, for new players coming on, and you'd have these programs you're planning for them, which sounds awesome. That's how it should be. I liked that when I first played EverQuest. My older stepbrother was, he got me into it, and he had some friends in his guild, and they were my tutorial. They were my guide, and it was a social aspect. And it'll be interesting to see, if they're tempted to incorporate a little tutorials or different things. Like, I really hope that they just, they make a really solid game, that's tested, and they button everything up through the exposition, and they just take their hands off, and let the players, let's see what the players do with it.
So can you tell me where this bank is? I mean, I'm just wondering, like, I think this is a really cool concept that you have a bank. So what street is that on?
So we will have an official, headquarters of the bank, probably in the capital, and there will be a vault, and it will have a lot of guards because it will need to, because everybody's going to be like, oh, I want to get rich in this game. Let's go rob the bank.
See, but the ones who are going to be really robbing the bank aren't the ones with the swords and the catapults. It's the ones who work there with the pens. Those are the ones who you got to worry about.
It's just the dukes, because dukes are the problem. They're just always.
And I will say, I've got a lot of very creative solutions to most of the issues with banking in Elyria. And I think people are going to be really excited. I'm holding off to like announcing all the details because there's some things that can be easily replicated, and I want to have my version set up and ready to go right out of the gate before I'm like, hey, by the way, you can compete with me by doing X. But yeah, it's going to be great stuff. We've got some fun plans. We've got some really smart people in Vitalis. Every day they're coming up with new projects, like the animal preserve I was talking with you about. Like, that was a result of our business contest. One of the contestants was chatting with me. I mentioned the idea, and he was like, wow, that's really cool. You mind if I come up with some ideas for that? And then he pitches me like a blueprint and all sorts of stuff, and it's fantastic. And that's awesome. And people are constantly saying, hey, you're theory crafting too much. We don't have solid mechanics yet. A lot of what you're creating may not be usable at launch. And my response to that is, sure, maybe 90% of what I create isn't something I can use at launch, but I got a ton more experience than everybody else who just created it then, and maybe that 10% gives me a slight edge. And that's what it's all about.
There is a huge risk here, because, and we lived this with those of us who played a lot of Landmark at the beginning, legendary neurotoxin here, and I especially played a ton of that game and spent hours and hours coming up with plans of what we would do when that feature that was hinted came into the game. And then as soon as something close to that feature came in, it was poorly implemented and actually made it harder to accomplish what we wanted to do with it. And then, well, the game doesn't even exist anymore. But like, I spent a year coming up with like crazy ideas and arguing with digs in the forums and and
the colony, your whole community,
people on the internet about how great it was going to be when we finally had the tools to make our dreams come true in this game. And once like once we got our hands on the closest things we needed to like the beginning of like cool stuff, other than just building things that were pretty in the game. Like at the very beginning, it was, oh man, if we're even going to come close to getting this done, we're going to hate doing it because it sucks, you know. Not necessarily that bad, and a lot of people did have fun, but like, well, conceptually the idea of managing a town or a capital and having these large groups of people and getting the contracts to work and converting, talking about implementing currency and banking in the game. What happens all the time, or from what we've seen, is there's always a missing piece. Like, we could do this if we had, like, it'll be this close. It'll be this close. Like, we could do this if this feature worked, or if this feature existed. And then we just rant on the forums about, oh, well, my whole life will be better if I had this one tiny little feature. And like, that's the end of it. So I'm in that group of, let's not write 14-page documents on what we want to do. Like, I don't know.
You know, that being said, I don't regret whatsoever those 8 feature concept documents that I wrote, because I still use those and reference those. Like, those are great. I want to really sit down and write more, but they really take like one solid week of, you know, work time and concentration to do. But yeah, you know, that's it's one of those things where you can plan and plan and plan, and some games it works out. Like, I remember all the planning I did for World of Warcraft, and then the entire way the crafting system worked relative to how they explained it worked was completely different.
Yeah. And that's definitely a factor. It's a major factor. And that's super important, right? Because a lot of stuff we're not going to be able to do that we hoped we could do, or we planned for this. And a lot of it is just learning to surmount those obstacles. Can we do it in a different way? And we kind of already had to do that because of questions that have been asked about certain mechanics, right? Like contracts. Initially, people were like, oh, contracts are the end all be all. We can do this, we can do that. And then we got more clarification on them. And it's like, oh, well, contracts, you can't do percentages. You know, it's like, oh, give me 10% of your income. You know, you can't do that. It's like lump sums and basic stuff. And so now profit sharing, how do we do that? We've got to work out a new system. And so that's where, like, the, land use. You offer them the use of the land, and they gain ownership of the land as they pay back their debt, that type of deal, stuff like that. So we have to find different ways. But the experience we got, that compounds. Like, my banking idea, initially, that came from Revival. I pitched it there, and it was so primitive back then. But I built on it, and now it's something completely different. But
I think, sorry to interrupt and jump in, but I think like just the fact that you're like going through doing this, and everybody in the community making it, like putting it out there, not being afraid of other people stealing the ideas, like just throwing it out there, because the more the developers can see this, the more they can just build these features in. And I think Zog said it in the chat, is like having built-in features is like, because then you're not trying to work around the game to try and play the game. You're actually playing the game. So I mean, it's great if they can see what people want to do, and they just build the game people want to play rather than the game they want to make. It's scale. Yeah. They got to balance what they want to make versus what people want to play.
I'm not down with relying on a Google Doc that I need to reference to see what my account balance in your virtual bank that is unsupported by a game mechanic is. Like, I am 100% not okay with that. Some people would, but you know what? Some people are part of guilds where DKP is their life. You know, like that's fine. I can see other people having fun with that, but I am not okay with having to play around somebody's system that is implemented in a Google Doc.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing is with any sort of financial service in a game, the one primary thing is trust, right? And you know, when I pitched my banking idea for Revival, people were instantly like, "Oh, scammer, watch out!" You know.
Yeah, because you're a scammer. That's why they said that.
Well, I mean,
so the big thing is creating that trust factor. There are ways in which we can create, I may actually have to create what is essentially a bank, like a literal digital bank, where people hold accounts, and you know, probably not as complex as actual banking systems, but something akin to that, and where people have control of their own account, and you know, and stuff like that. And with all the technology we have available now, you know, blockchain and all this stuff, there's any number of ways we could do that. I probably wouldn't, you know, go straight cryptocurrency. I thought about that, and I was like, way too complicated.
That's a beast. Believe me, it's something I've learned a lot about in the past year. It's a beast you do not want to try to ride.
I know, like, I've been looking into cryptocurrencies for a long time, and it's. Yeah, no, it's not
crypto.
For
just
something
the
like
blockchain.
this.
Just using blockchain for a secure inventory system that actually does make sense. There is actually a company doing that. Full cryptocurrency, nobody needs that. There's a flow chart I've seen. Does your company need a cryptocurrency?
Yes,
One direction to a box that says no.
That's the most important thing to examine with any of those ICOs is. Do they actually need a currency? If so, if not, then why do they have one? You know, it's just a bandwagon effect. Everybody's like, oh, I need to get one so I can raise money.
Well,
blockchain ice cream.
We can go on and on about this for a long time. We are starting to run out of time, but before we move on, I did want to mention, you know, kind of going back to Sog, what you were talking about with Landmark. One thing I'm excited about is when they do open this up and they give the keys over to the players, what do the players find, right? So these ideas, how do you actually implement them? Because I do think, and I think you'd probably agree, Sog, that some of the best building tools, initially at least, that came out of Landmark were discovered by the players. They were found by the players, and the developers were like, oh, wow, that's really cool. So anyways, that's one thing here. I'm really, really excited to see what happens when they say, here's exposition, go for it. Anyways, that's probably a whole nother topic. But I'm going to put up a picture. What was the name of the shield?
The pre-alpha tribal shield exploration for Frothy. And exploration is really what I hope the word is, because I took a glance at it, was working on stuff, and then 5 seconds later I had to take a double take because, like, wait, did I just see what I thought I just saw? And then I looked, and yeah, it was worse than I thought. Honestly, I appreciate the intent of the artist, but it looks like whoever worked on the front, whoever worked on the back were two separate people. There is no consistency. On the front, you've got the part with the metal brackets. You look at that at the backside, they don't attach to anything. It looks like a costume shield. It looks like the stuff on the front is glued on. Like you glued some fabric on a piece of metal. You barely screwed it onto the front of the wood, and that's that. And you know, you've got this fat band across the middle of it to try to hold that whole front thing on. But what's going to keep it on? That crappy metal frame. The metal frame around the outside is the only thing holding the structural integrity together, plus or minus if the pieces of wood are actually slotted in, if they've got, like, you know, grooves that they kind of fit in. But other than that, like, 1-2 good hits with like a spear kind of going upward and prying at it, downward with an axe or a hammer, that thing's done. That is a costume shield. That I would not try to protect my life with that thing. And likewise, you can also see the lack of depth when you look at the backside. You've got the rivets going down, up and down the middle. You don't see any evidence of that on the front side. Obviously, you could say, okay, well, it's bolted into the metal, but it's bolted into the metal so thinly that you can't see it through the fabric that's glued on. So,
but
it doesn't really.
Purple.
And then on top of that, it's one. I don't know what the size of this is supposed to be a one-hand thing where you've just got that single grip like that. I'm not going to say I'm a shield fighter and I know a lot about shields and stuff, but I have a feeling that thing is just on a single pivot point. It's just going to be flopping around.
The grip in the center of the shield, even though it's not the way that we usually see it in movies and stuff, is actually the more effective way of holding it, because it allows you to get the shield further away from you're more likely to lose the shield, but it allows you to get the shield further away from your body, so you can position it in different ways. You can actually punch with it. You're not feeling crouched over. Yeah. But my problem with it
is the size, though.
My problem is the concave arcs on the edges, because that way you're losing so much protection in that arced area, and in the end the corners of it are basically additional weight that are that aren't doing it. And if it were bigger and you're trying to like make a shield wall, the level of like extra overlap you have to do to make sure that there's not a hole like right there in front of you. Also, one of the things about a shield is to be able to kind of disguise where your weapons and your head position is. So, like, you're blocking view. It's like extra view. The outside of a shield, the edges of a shield should be convex, and because they satisfy the goal of it. I'm a big fan of the conceptually Elyria, but sometimes I see my concern is that in order for me to say that these little art leaks are great, I need to come up with an extreme justification for why that isn't presented with it. So if I have to come up with an extreme justification why this is something good, or if I have to say, oh, this is a decorative shield and it's only to be used by the royal guard of the king of this kingdom that's mostly Harathi, and the expedition or exploration, really it just means it's like the face of the nation, and that's why it's purple, and that's why it's designed like that. They're the Swiss guard of some Harathi kingdom. Right? If I'm doing that, then I'm a lunatic, right? That I'm trying to make it great. If I have to try to make it great, it just doesn't feel good.
So someone said in chat, this thing's maybe supposed to cover about 1/3 of a Harathi, and not with that grip. If that's the size indication of it, that's something that you're like really bracing with your entire arm. You're not pushing out like a buckler or a smaller shield with it.
No, even big shields.
Even a big shield.
I'll show you a video of a guy with a pretty large shield, and he's demonstrating like the different kinds of hand.
All right. But yeah, I mean, I like the quality of the materials and the textures on them and the rendering and stuff, but the overall shape and construction of it, I'm glad that it says exploration and this is not, intended to be a final asset, because I feel like I would see this and not buy it on account of it looking like it's going to fall apart in 2 hits.
All right.
Yeah.
And with that, we are now about 5 minutes over. So does anyone have anything else you want to talk about, mention, anything we've forgotten?
I got mine.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think that's it.
John,
I linked the giveaway in chat.
For those who are interested in Ashes of Creation, we also do another show every other Friday, and we are able to only give away T-shirts, so we are doing that. So certainly, if you have interest, sign up for it and watch that show as well. So, yeah, John and Veluux, thanks for joining us. It's been a fun
Good to be back for a little while. I had fun.
So, yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And as always, this will be posted a lot of other places, YouTube. Feel free to spread it around, comment. We always like to have feedback. And, yeah, so thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
See you later.
We will see everyone in 2 weeks. See you.
Yeah.